You're thinking about relocating to Dallas, Texas, and you might be feeling a little overwhelmed because Dallas is a pretty large city. It's the ninth largest city in the entire country. We're talking about a little fewer than 1.3 million people, which is a decline from the previous years. And with that large of a population, where there is a plethora of choices and options for you, what type of home you want, the housing style, the area, the neighborhood, there's a lot that you have to consider. You are discombobulated, just wondering where you are going to spend your life and create your memories. Well, in this video, I'm going to share with you 9 areas to avoid if you're considering making Dallas your home. Are you ready? Hi, I'm Tracy Sorrell with the DFW Life, and I help people relocate to Dallas-Fort Worth on a fairly regular basis. And one thing I hear very often is, Tracy, is this a good place to live? And that is code for, is this a safe place to live? Well, as a realtor, I can't steer you in an area or away from an area. I can only provide you with statistics and resources and things for you to do your own research to determine what works best for you. But in this video, we're going to do just that. We're going to go over some statistics that at least have you thinking, considering, and wondering if these areas are the best place for you to live your life. There are areas where there's gentrification, and there are areas that have been forgotten, almost abandoned. But people are coming in and they're making some significant improvements in different areas of Dallas. I'm from Dallas, born here, raised here, went to private schools, public schools. I love Dallas. There's so much rich history in Dallas. I was actually surprised at some of the reports that I've seen, because you have to realize when you grow up in a place and move away and come back, then things look quite differently to you. Hey, if you're from Dallas and some of these places have kind of changed from what you remembered, or you're saying, hey, Tracy, I looked at this report, but that's not what we are experiencing. Great, I want to hear from you too. Let's plug in and let's begin.
Hi, Tracy, and hello, everybody. I'm Norma Adams Wade, and I am a proud Dallas native. I was the first African-American to cover news for the Dallas Morning News citywide. So I became familiar with all the areas, particularly my neighborhood. And Tracy mentioned one of the areas that I consider being the neighborhood close to where I grew up, which was the Park Row South Boulevard community. And so I'll let Tracy give us a synopsis again of what her research showed about that area, which I totally disagreed with. If she wants me to, I can tell my objections. Do you want me to go ahead?
Yes, so I can tell you that South Boulevard Park Row is number 1 on the list of worst places to live based on
such an insult.
I know.
Such an insult. And here's why
you are. Yeah, based on violent crimes, property crime. So share with us what you know historically about this area. And I can see you're pretty incensed by the idea that made the list. So go ahead.
Well, I am. And now let me give this caveat. I've been around a long time, and times are changing and have changed. So a lot could have happened in recent decades, maybe the last decade, 12 to 15 years, that just explode my memory of the area. But the traditional reputation of the Park Row South Boulevard community is very upscale, very progressive for African Americans. It traditionally was a well-income Jewish area. And when the Jewish community vacated the area, sort of pre-60s, pre-1960s, then very progressive African Americans moved into this beautiful 2-story wide porched, greenery, two-story Victorian turn of the century homes, and were proud residents of the area. These were, of course, our doctors, our lawyers, our teachers, our leading ministers. I remember very few people who weren't in that category of profession who lived in the Park Road, South Dallas area. But I must mention that in more recent years, as I said, Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard, which was Forest Avenue, did begin to absorb more crime because it was a central site in that South Dallas Fair Park area. And I do remember a couple of meetings that residents had where they voiced concern about the activities going on Martin Luther King. The police were just really pulling their hair out as to how to deal with it. Further south of Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard, yes, that's always been traditionally low income, high crime. And so, but once you crossed over Martin Luther King, there was the safety zone of those two streets. But like I say, in recent years, perhaps the spillover has increased.
Activity nearby is something I need to consider if I'm going to commit to a particular home, neighborhood, or street. So thank you for that.
I would agree with that. I would have to admit that. It's such a shock, though, with me being a native Dallasite and being so tied to the traditional reputation. I probably will have to accept what has been happening recently as reflected by the statistics.
Okay, well, let's hit upon a couple of more of these areas that hit the hot list of places that are considered the worst areas of Dallas. And we know worse is all relative, but just based on this report, the second one would be South Dallas Fair Park. And we know that from Dallas, we have to be very particular in distinguishing what do we call in South Dallas. So this section that hit number 2 on the list is the South Dallas near, around, surrounding Fair Park.
Okay, yeah. Now I cannot argue with that description. That is the area where I was born. That's my turf. And yes, it is known as low income, little wood frame, 2 and 3 bedroom homes. Traditionally, the term shotgun house was very well used. It's known as the Lincoln Manor area, and then all the way south of there is Bonton. There's a lot of infilling in that area south of Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard, which is South Dallas Fair Park area. So housing was helped, but again, it was definitely for low-income first homeowner families, and but it had an impact, a kind of a positive impact on the area.
I'm from Oak Cliff, and I when I come back and visit, I see a change, but to see it make the list made my hair just stand up in the back of my neck. Tell me a little bit about what you are seeing in Oak Cliff and why you may think it has hit the hot list. And of course, please share just a little bit of history about Oak Cliff.
Oak Cliff traditionally, what I would say was sort of like an exploratory area. It was south of the Trinity River from downtown Dallas, and always viewed as an ethnic community, African Americans and Latinos. And so in current times, yes, crime may have risen, the stats seem to say, because the ethnic measurement of the area has greatly increased.
Number 3 on the list is the Convention Center.
Yeah, now the Convention Center is really considered downtown Dallas, just south of downtown Dallas. There's a lot of I forget the term, but in the downtown area where you build the high-rise condo-like places. The city is interested in that area, but then you do have people who quote-unquote hang out, low-income homeless type people who hang out in the downtown area. So that there's that little problem, but it looks good. The area looks nice, and the city is interested, and the city pays attention to that area.
And then we have, and I'm just going to skip around, then we have 2 extremes. We have what's on the list is Northwest Dallas, and you and I discussed that's really West Dallas. And then the other fancy name that I wasn't familiar with was Urbandale-Parkdale, and you kind of felt like that was probably East Dallas. So just in a couple of sentences, what would be your opinion about what you know to be true or have observed about West and East Dallas, and how they may have landed on one of the hot list of places to be aware of if you decide to purchase there?
No question about West Dallas. West Dallas has always been considered low income, high crime.
Let's start with South Boulevard and Park Row. South Boulevard Park Row is a historic Dallas neighborhood. It has about 26,000 people. And I know what you're thinking, 26,000 people, that's the size of a small town. Well, this particular area, I think, according to this report, they're not considering only South Boulevard and Park Row. I believe they're encompassing the entire area of South Boulevard and Park Row. Here, the houses are a mixture of prairie style and craftsman bungalow, a historic revival styles by prominent Dallas architects through the period of 1910 and 1935. So this is a historic part of Dallas. You had very wealthy, successful Jewish society who lived here, including Marcus with Neiman Marcus. And then after 1970, it started to change a little bit because now there's more commercial activity in the surrounding streets that surround South Boulevard and Park Row. Now again, South Boulevard, Park Row, you're gonna see some beautiful homes, but because we are including the area, you're considering moving here, then the crime rate is important to you. So according to research, South Boulevard has a crime rate that is 277% higher than the average crime rate in Dallas. You may be thinking, Tracy, wow, that's a pretty high statistic for violent crime in that area. And you might be a little shocked by that. But remember, when you buy a home, you're not just buying that singular address. You're buying the entire area, the community. Well, let's move over to two more areas that, well, buyer beware. We're going to start with South Dallas. And if you're from Dallas, we are very particular about what people are defining as South Dallas. So this portion of South Dallas, I'm referring to near Fair Park. And from Fair Park, we're going to hop over to the convention center area that's, well, it's downtown Dallas. First, let's start with South Dallas, Fair Park. Well, Fair Park is where you're going to see many of our museums. There's a lot of culture there at the Fair Park. And when we have our Fair Park, state of Texas has a Fair Park, that's where it is here in Dallas. And just like everything else that's bigger and better in Texas, you're not going to beat a fair. You're not going to see a better fair than what you will see here in Texas in South Dallas. Well, let's talk about the crime. Because if you are deciding to live your life near this area, well, the crime rate is probably important. According to research, the statistics, the neighborhood has a population of about 28,000 people. And yes, that's a large group of people. And the crime rate is 147% higher than the Texas average. You have 1 in 16 chances of becoming a victim of any type of crime in this area near the Fair Park. Number 3, Convention Center District, which is located in the southern downtown section. There are about 920 people who live in this area. And remember, they're doing some, revitalization of downtown Dallas, like so many other cities. So you're going to have the apartments, townhome, condos. And as far as crime rate, we're looking at about 12,000 per 100,000 people. In the Convention Center District, this is where you're going to find a higher population of homeless. It's near a bus station, which is very similar, if we can just be honest, it's going to be very similar than what you will see in any major city because it is downtown. And there is a section of downtown, if you want to live that lifestyle, the hip swank in the middle of things, and you like that urban feel of living downtown, where there are some areas that would be probably a much safer option than the ones right around the convention center. So if that's what you want, as far as just that real sense of I'm in Dallas and I can see the skyline, then let's do a one-on-one and I'll try to help you decide which area you think would be a better fit for you. Next up, number 4, Cedar Crest. And this really surprises me as far as the crime rate, because I remember Cedar Crest as being a very well insulated area where you have professional people who live there, you have golf course. Cedar Crest is also where we have Dallas Zoo. So it's a very fun place to be. But if you're thinking about moving there, you're going to have some older homes there, and there are going to be some pockets of new construction, and frankly, you'll see pockets of new construction everywhere throughout the Dallas Metroplex. Well, let's take a look at the crime rate if you decide to live in this area. This area of Cedar Crest has about 64,000 people who live there, and it's considered a very high crime rate with 102% higher than Texas average. You have a 1 in 19 chance of becoming a victim of any type of crime here. Coming in at number 5, Cockrell Hill. Cockrell Hill has about 4,200 people who live there and a crime rate that is 136% higher than the Texas average. You have 1 in 16 chances of becoming a victim of any type of crime here in Cockrell Hill. Coming up next, West Dallas and East Dallas. So with West Dallas for quite some time has had a reputation of being a little bit more rough around the edges. In West Dallas, you do have a great population of poverty, but frankly, the lists that have, of areas that have hit the top places, top worst places, because, we have to have clickbait. Most of these areas do have a high poverty rate. But remember, just because you have poverty does not automatically mean you have crime, but unfortunately, there seems to be some relationship there. So let's talk about West Dallas. West Dallas has about 2,100 people who live there, and the crime rate that is 135% higher than the Texas state average. And then looking at East Dallas, number 7, that population is about 26,000 people with a crime rate that is about 90% higher than the Texas average. You have a 1 in 20 chance of becoming victims of any type of crime there in East Dallas. And number 8, well, that surprised me and a little offended me because I grew up in number 8, and that would be Oak Cliff. Well, Oak Cliff, if you're from Dallas, we make a distinction between South Dallas and Oak Cliff. If you're not from Dallas, we will know because you're lumping them in together. Oak Cliff used to be a city of its own. So some people who do not know Dallas well will consider Oak Cliff part of South Dallas. Oak Cliff is where you'll have a lot of history, a lot of prominent, successful people, African American at the time that I lived there, who lived in Oak Cliff. In Oak Cliff, we had a lot of pride about saying we were from Oak Cliff. And with Oak Cliff, we also have Bishop Arts, and you also have a Redbird. It used to be Redbird Mall. You have the Redbird area, but you have such a diverse group of people who live in Oak Cliff. So when I saw it hit the list, I was a little disappointed, but because it is a major metroplex, I wasn't totally surprised. Let's take a look at what's going on in Oak Cliff. Oak Cliff has a population of about 33,000 people. Remember, it used to be a city by itself of its own, and it has a crime rate 88% higher than the Texas average. You have a 1 in 20 chance of becoming a victim in Oak Cliff. And when you consider the other averages, okay, maybe I am a little prejudiced. Oak Cliff is not the highest, it is one of the lower ones. So it's still a great place to live. And number 9 on the list, I must admit, I'm not very familiar with this area, Eagle Ford. And my aunt, the local historian, she describes this as far west Dallas. Let's take a look at what's going on in far west Dallas. We're looking at a population of about 8,000 people, and the overall crime rate is about 76% higher than the Texas average. Well, hopefully this is giving an insight on the Don't Do Dallas, meaning what are the 9 areas in Dallas that you might want to consider living or not living when making your move here. Because what I do know, when I help people relocate to Dallas or anywhere, crime is very important, if not the top on their list of priorities. Because when you're purchasing a home, you're not just purchasing an address, you're purchasing the entire area, the entire community. In Dallas, we have some great areas for you to consider. And if you want to know more about those areas, hey, I'm here. Let's do a one-on-one. But I absolutely want you to go into every community that you see with your eyes wide open. Now, even the areas we talked about, these 9 areas, the hot areas to avoid. Listen, Dallas, like most major cities, we're undergoing a lot of changes that people are coming in, revitalizing, and they are great places to live. A very diverse population of people who have decided, I like Dallas, I love Dallas, I am making Dallas my home. If you're ready to relocate to Dallas, give me a call. Let's get together and let's figure out which area would be the best place for you to call home.